Deep beneath the frost-bitten, jagged landscape of a nameless place, hidden from all maps, where the wind screams louder than the desperate men inside, lies a facility that doesn't exist. This is the Abyss. It is the end of the line, a supermax prison designed to hold the unholdable for total erasure. Here, the world's most dangerous secrets are buried under reinforced concrete. The walls swallow screams, and the stale air is heavy with the scent of ozone and the weight of despair. This is where the dangerous are kept, and at the center of this purgatory lies a cell that even veteran guards hesitate to approach. In that cell sits a man who has become a ghost, Victor. The Silence Vein is a living legend. For 10 years he hasn't spoken a word. Not a single syllable has escaped his lips. His records are a black hole, classified at a level even the staff cannot access. To inmates he is a figure of death. To guards he is a ticking time bomb. He sits in stillness, his unblinking eyes fixed on a wall that has seen more suffering than most imagine. He doesn't move, react, or speak. He is a predator in a cage, waiting for a moment only he knows is coming. Into this world of shadows stepped the ambitious and power-hungry Warden Marcus Sterling. A man of cold ambition, Sterling didn't see a dangerous inmate. He saw a trophy to cement his own legacy. He believed previous wardens were weak, and that he was the one destined to break the figure who couldn't be broken. Sterling wanted a legacy of control to propel him into high power. To him, Victor Vane was the ultimate test. He was convinced that if he could crack the silence, he could dominate any man alive. The fear Vane inspires is a physical pressure. During his walk, the entire wing falls into silence. Even the most hardened serial killers move to the far side of their cells when they hear the clinking of Vane's restraints. There is an aura of lethal, quiet efficiency around him, a sense that he knows how to end a life in 100 ways without trying. The air becomes thick as the ghost of the Abyss passes by, his face a mask of stone. Sterling finally decided to confront the legend. He entered Vane's cell, flanked by 2 guards. The warden spoke for an hour, a monologue of sharp threats designed to provoke a reaction, but Vane just sat there. His unblinking stare was like looking into a lightless well. There was no anger in his eyes, just a terrifyingly calm vacuum. The silence became a physical weight, pressing against Sterling's chest until he felt his pulse racing. The man supposed to be in control felt like the one being interrogated. The tension snapped during a transfer. 3 inmates lunged at Vane with sharpened shivs. It should have been a slaughter. Instead, it was a demonstration of Vane's lethality. Vane moved with a fluid grace that defied his years of isolation. In 3 heartbeats, the attackers were neutralized, their joints shattered, and weapons taken. Vane didn't even break his composure. He simply stood there, waiting for the guards to reapply his cuffs, his eyes as cold as the permafrost. Shaken, Sterling ordered a search of Vane's cell. He found a secret compartment in Vane's cell behind a loose piece of molding. Inside was a single, folded piece of paper. As Sterling opened it, his blood turned to ice. It was a list of names, all belonging to high-ranking government officials. Every name on the list was missing or dead. He wasn't just a prisoner, he was a ledger of secrets. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Sterling realized this was a hit list for the future, and he was now holding a live grenade with the pin already pulled against his chest. The list of names felt heavy in Sterling's hands, a physical manifestation of a conspiracy far larger than these prison walls. He realized then that Victor Vane was never just a prisoner. He was a weapon, discarded, but never deactivated. Years ago, Vane was the crown jewel of a nameless intelligence agency, a ghost in the cracks of global power. He had been a deep-cover operative, a man whose existence was a classified secret, executing the impossible with surgical precision. But his masters grew terrified of his efficiency. They saw a man who knew too much. They betrayed him, framing him for a horrific crime to bury him forever in the concrete bowels of the Abyss. His silence wasn't born of a broken mind. It was a tactical decision to protect the truth. As Sterling processed this, his world shifted. The warden, once master of his domain, started seeing shadows. It began with small accidents, his phone line buzzing with static, his car's security system disarming itself at midnight. Then came the anonymous messages appearing on his secure monitors. The list is only the beginning. Sterling's arrogance turned into cold paranoia. He realized with a jolt of terror that the walls of the abyss were not thick enough. Even from his soundless cell, Vane had reach. He had allies on the outside, still loyal to the ghost they once followed. Vane wasn't trapped with the guards. They were trapped with a man who had already planned his endgame. In the midst of this escalating warfare, a young guard named Leo began to see the cracks in the official narrative. Leo was new, still carrying a sense of duty not yet corroded by the prison's cruelty. He watched Vane through the observation glass with an uneasy curiosity. He noticed the way Vane's eyes tracked the rotation of the guards with mathematical precision. He saw a man who wasn't a monster but a soldier holding a secret that could collapse the political system. Leo's father had been a veteran who spoke of men like Vane, men used and then thrown away. He suspected that the man everyone called a killer was actually the only honest soul left in the facility. But the rot within the abyss went deeper than Leo imagined. Sterling's most trusted lieutenant, Miller, was not who he seemed. Miller had been receiving orders from the same shadowy organization that originally framed Vane. These powerful entities were growing impatient. The list Sterling found meant the clock was ticking toward a catastrophic leak. They couldn't afford a trial, and they certainly couldn't afford for Vane to speak. The order was clear: eliminate the problem. Miller began coordinating with a mercenary team, preparing for a tactical strike that would be masked by a facility-wide power failure designed to look like an accident. The tension reached a breaking point as the scheduled maintenance for the power grid approached. The final order arrived on Miller's device: execute the protocol during the outage. Vane, sensing the shifting atmosphere with a predator's instinct, finally did something he hadn't done in a decade. He looked directly at Leo during the evening check. As Leo leaned in, Vane leaned forward, his voice a dry, gravelly whisper. "Leo," he said, the name sounding foreign in the quiet cell. "Tonight the storm comes. Go home. Stay with your family. Do not be here when the lights die." Leo stood frozen, his heart hammering. The silence had finally been broken by a warning of mercy. Leo didn't leave. Before he could process the gravity of the warning, a low hum vibrated through the floorboards. Then the world went black. The backup generators remained silent, sabotaged from within. The abyss was plunged into a liquid darkness. Sterling screamed for a status report that would never come, but as the emergency red lights flickered to life, a sound echoed through the halls that froze everyone's blood. It was the synchronized metallic clatter of thousands of electronic locks disengaging. In the most violent wing of the prison, every cell door slid open at once. The wolves were out, and the massacre had begun. The darkness within the abyss was not a mere absence of light. It was a living, breathing entity that swallowed the screams of the dying. When the cell doors clicked open, the sound was a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat that signaled the end of the old order. In the high-security wing, the world's most depraved killers spilled into the corridors, their eyes wide with a predatory hunger. But among the chaos, Victor Vane moved like a phantom through a graveyard. He did not run, and he did not shout. He flowed through the shadows, a silent blade cutting through the noise. When a group of inmates cornered a panicked young guard near the central hub, Vane appeared from the red-tinted gloom. He didn't use a weapon. With a series of precise, surgical strikes, he incapacitated the attackers, leaving them slumped against the cold concrete. He didn't stay for thanks. He had a destination, and time was a luxury he no longer possessed. Warden Marcus Sterling sat trapped in his command center, watching the monitors flicker with the ghost images of a facility eating itself alive. Beside him, Miller, the lieutenant he had trusted with his life, stood with a cold, detached expression. The betrayal was silent until the heavy thud of tactical boots echoed in the hallway. A team of mercenaries, professional and erasure-focused, breached the heavy doors. They were not there to save the warden. They were there to bury the evidence. Miller had sold the abyss to the highest bidder to ensure the list Vane held never saw the light of day. As the lead mercenary leveled his suppressed rifle at Sterling's chest, the air seemed to shatter. Vane didn't enter through the door. He emerged from the ventilation shafts above. A vengeful spirit dropped from the ceiling. The ensuing struggle was a masterclass in lethality. Vane moved with a speed that defied his years of incarceration, disarming the professionals and using their own momentum against them. He was a whirlwind of calculated violence, a man who had spent a decade refining the art of the kill in the silence of his own mind. When the last of the mercenaries lay broken on the floor, Vane turned to the cowering warden. Sterling expected the end, but Vane simply reached out and pulled the man to his feet. He didn't strike him. Instead, he dragged Sterling toward the main terminal, his grip like an iron shackle. The warden realized then that Vane wasn't the monster he had tried to create. He was the only thing standing between the facility and total annihilation. In the heat of the server room, Vane finally revealed the true purpose of his 10-year silence. It was not a psychological trauma or a vow of penance. It was a tactical necessity. He had been waiting for the facility's emergency broadcast frequency, a specific encrypted signal that only activated during a total security collapse, to serve as a carrier wave. By never speaking, he had prevented the warden's sophisticated biometric AI from ever mapping his voice, which allowed him to use his vocal cords now to bypass the final auditory lock. He leaned into the microphone, his voice a low, gravelly resonance that vibrated through the floorboards. He recited a string of alphanumeric codes, a digital skeleton key he had memorized years ago. The silence had been his shield, and now his voice was the sword. As the data began to upload, a massive dump of classified documents and hidden atrocities streaming into the global network, the facility's power began to stabilize. But by the time the emergency response teams breached the inner sanctum, the cell was empty. The abyss was retaken, but the man known as the Silence was gone. He hadn't escaped into the frozen wilderness. He had vanished into the very infrastructure of the prison, a ghost in the machine. Leo, the young guard who had heeded the warning, found only a single, folded piece of paper in Vane's empty cell. It was the list, but every name had been crossed out in red ink. Vane had become an urban legend, a whisper among the inmates that some men are too big for any cage. True danger was never the man who killed, but the man who knew the truth that could destroy a nation. Weeks later, Sterling was hiding in a safe house, stripped of his title and looking over his shoulder at every shadow. His secure phone, an unlisted line, vibrated on the table. He answered it, his breath hitching in his throat. A voice, deep and resonant with the weight of a decade of secrets, spoke for the last time. "The list is now public, Marcus," Vane said, the words cutting through the static of the line like a guillotine. "The truth is afire. I suggest you start running before it reaches you." The line went dead, leaving the warden in a silence far more terrifying than the one he had